Hi, and welcome to the third webinar in our Conceive Baby webinar series for 2017. Today we'll be talking about a topic which affects many women during their lifetime, but particularly in their reproductive years and especially when they are wanting to fall pregnant. So firstly, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Tasha Jennings, founder of Conceive Baby. I'm a naturopath, nutritionist, natural fertility specialist and author of The Vitamins Guide and The Fertility Diet. I also write and provide expert comment for various media publications, and I'm the director of Zycia. Now, Zycia means life and specialises in premium nutrition to support life in its earliest stages, from fertility and preconception all the way through to pregnancy and breastfeeding. It's really been the past 6 years that I have specialised in fertility and pregnancy, and the reason was really a personal one. We were wanting to conceive and I was having difficulty. So what started out, I guess, as a small personal project really became a career passion as I met with researchers both here and internationally, and was really inspired by what I was discovering, particularly about the role of certain nutrients and their bioavailability on fertility, as well as the long-term health of the developing baby. And this is how my company Zycia was born, along with the premium nutritional supplement Zycia Natal Nutrients. And more recently, to further support couples in their fertility journey, I developed conceivebaby.com.au, which is what you have all joined us through today. And again, based on my own experience, I was lucky enough to have a background in health and nutrition, and with my husband being a cardiologist, we were fortunate enough to have, I guess, the medical contacts and health knowledge that meant that our fertility journey was relatively short compared to many couples that I do speak with. And we're now blessed with two beautiful children, photos of whom you may see scattered around the Conceive Baby website. My aim for Conceive Baby is really to bring together a team of specialists across all aspects of fertility and preconception health, so that other people who are struggling, like we were, can have access to qualified expert information that we were fortunate enough to have. And today I'm thrilled to be speaking with Angela Smith. Angela is the director and owner of Melbourne Natural Medicine. With over 10 years experience, Angela offers extensive knowledge and clinical experience in treating fertility issues, IVF support, PCOS, and of course, endometriosis, which is what we are picking her brain about today. Angela has also been a radio presenter on the multi-award-winning Healthy and Sustainable Lifestyle Show. She's presented to naturopaths around Australia and New Zealand on hormonal disorders and writes articles for various magazines and websites. Angela holds a Bachelor of Health Science, Complementary Medicine, an Advanced Diploma of Complementary Medicine Naturopathy. She's a fertility educator, a yoga teacher trained, as well as a HemoView and VLA practitioner. So welcome, Angela.
Hi, Tasha. Thank you. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on board. Really appreciate taking the time out of your busy schedule. Now, tonight, as I've mentioned, we are talking about endometriosis, which is a really common condition which does affect many women, particularly on their journey to pregnancy. And basically, it's where the endometrial tissue, it just isn't playing nice, really, is it? It's not in the endometrium, in the uterus, where it's meant to be. It's found outside the uterus. It can be on the outside wall. It can be on the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, even the bowel and bladder. And I think anyone who is listening tonight and struggles with endometriosis knows that it actually can be found anywhere. So I guess tell us a bit about this and how it impacts fertility. As well as your clinical experience and of course, your beautiful clinic in Melbourne.
Oh, great. Yeah, I have a very beautiful clinic in Melbourne, in North Melbourne. We have a big team of practitioners, naturopaths and chiropractors and massage therapists and acupuncture, and we really are passionate about fertility and natural medicine and work in conjunction with IVF and just people who want to know how they can heal their reproductive issues, male or female. And endometriosis is definitely a passion for all of our team to help women with in this area, because there's definitely a lot that, as I'm sure you know, Tasha, that we can do that really assists in just reducing the symptoms and improving fertility for these women. So let me just pull up my slideshow and show you a couple of pictures of the clinic. If you just give me a second.
Yep, great. We've got you there.
How's that going? Good? Great. So, as I mentioned, that we have a great team at the clinic, and one of the things that we also specialise in the clinic is functional and diagnostic testing. So we're really interested in finding out the driver of the individual and what might be contributing to promote or drive the hormonal imbalance and issues that are associated with endometriosis and falling pregnant. So we have a range of different tests that we do offer at the clinic to understand each person and their individual needs. That's some pictures of the clinic. There's some nice clinic rooms there and our dispensary and reception area. So let's get into the facts about endometriosis. So around 20 to 50% of women with infertility actually suffer with endometriosis, as I like to call it, endo. And unfortunately, around up to 25% of those women actually have some sort of pelvic pain, and they may actually have endometriosis. Around 50%, around 30 to 50% do suffer with a level of subfertility, I like to call it. Hereditary factors are often involved. Liver detoxification and genetic issues around the ability to hormonally detoxify are often an issue. So I'll talk about that a little bit more further down the track. It's also really important to consider other accompanying health issues in endometriosis, such as celiac disease, undiagnosed thyroid disease, and even other types of autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, autoimmune thyroid disease, and MS. So, because there are actually quite a few common characteristics between endo and autoimmune diseases. So it's worthwhile, if you are trying to fall pregnant and you do or have been diagnosed with endometriosis, just to assess if there are other underlying issues that you perhaps may not have had checked with your doctor. So here's a little picture that I picked that's fairly basic, and I picked it for that reason, just because sometimes endometriosis can be a little bit misleading as to what it actually is. And as Tasha said, it's that there's these little endometrial tissues that have migrated around the reproductive area and have moved as far as the bladder to the rectum to the bowel and different areas of the uterus. And unfortunately, these little adhesions are very inflamed and have a lot of immune activity happening, which means that they're constantly responding to hormonal changes. And as we all know, every month, a woman's hormones are moving up and down and fluctuating. And unfortunately, that can therefore affect the whole abdomen area of a woman suffering with endometriosis. And of course, there are varying degrees and severity of endometriosis, from small, mild adhesions to rather severe. And in some cases, unfortunately, some women can actually have an issue where some organs are even attached to each other, such as the ovaries to the bladder and things like that. So it's that's where, you know, seeking the help of a gynecologist and working alongside a naturopath is quite advantageous in really, you know, using the best of medicine and assessing the severity of your endometriosis. So as I mentioned, it's a fairly distorted pelvic anatomy, and this distortion can have quite an impact on the embryo and the sperm and the actual effects of fertility and the ability for implantation of that embryo into the endometrium. So that's one of the biggest issues. Often it's not just that you can't fall pregnant, it's that the implantation is severely affected due to different immune factors in the endometrium. So just some signs and symptoms to look out for with endometriosis that I pick up, I guess, prior to the gold standard diagnostic criteria, which is a laparoscopy, which is the keyhole surgery that a gynecologist does and can actually diagnose and potentially try to remove some adhesions. But often women come in with fertility issues to the clinic and they may have undiagnosed endometriosis. So these are some of the signs I look out for, and also signs that the treatment I'm implementing may be improving. So signs like blood clots and, you know, the lack of smooth blood. The endometrial should be fairly smooth in a healthy woman without endometriosis, so to speak. So, you know, menstrual pain and any pain in the area with cycle changes can also indicate endometriosis. Ovulation pain is also sometimes an indicator. Spotting premenstrually and post-menstruation, and also spotting during intercourse, as well as pain with intercourse, can be an indicator. Heavy periods, short cycles, and one of the key signs I find is when there's a fair bit of pain before the actual blood flows. Unfortunately, women also suffer with IBS, food intolerances, bloating, constipation, gas, and diarrhea. So IBS is a common symptom or issue, health issue, that tends to go along hand in hand with endometriosis, which is where some dietary interventions can be really helpful with reducing the signs and symptoms of IBS. Other issues that can also happen are urinary tract infections, thrush, a lot of heat prior to the period and also at ovulation, fluid retention, headaches, iron deficiency. And there's also a gene mutation which we can test for that's quite common in women with endometriosis, and that's called the MTHFR gene. There are different tests that you can use to assess endometriosis. Obviously, as I mentioned, the laparoscopy is the gold standard, and that's just really for a diagnosis and a potential sort of cleanup of the area. But unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily control the disease. It is very good to go in and remove a lot of the inflammation and discomfort, but it doesn't necessarily stop the disease from progressing. So we like to look at other baselines to just assess the change and influence of diet and lifestyle and herbal and nutritional interventions. So we utilize blood and saliva hormone testing, which we do at the clinic. And then the issue with some of those hormone testing is that it's ideal to do them at particular times of the cycle. So I've just made a note of where those times are for your information. There are other tests that you can do that I've mentioned here. Some of my favorites are, as I mentioned, to check for the thyroid, to look at food intolerances. I'm quite passionate about reducing foods that may be aggravating a woman with endometriosis. Then we have different treatment strategies that we apply in naturopathic medicine. Improving the hormones and supporting healthy liver detoxification of estrogen is a key area that we do address, and we're very blessed, aren't we, Tasha, with having all these beautiful herbs and nutrients in our dispensaries to individually prescribe to women, and they just make such a beautiful difference.
Absolutely.
So another area that we also work out and focus on is the immune. The immune system is incredibly involved in endometriosis and as well as inflammation. So trying to reduce those aspects in a woman can really help with the symptom relief and therefore also assist with getting pregnant. Oxidative stress, which is a lot of people sort of struggle at what is that? And I like to describe that as sort of if you cut an apple and you expose it to the air, it starts going brown. That's a similar sort of thing that can happen in our body. It's a certain sort of rusting that happens. And with endometriosis, there is a level of that happening within the uterus. So, you know, increasing the antioxidants in our diet and looking at reducing environmental factors that promote oxidative stress is highly beneficial to a woman with endo. As well as supporting the microflora status and digestion, and avoiding endocrine disruptors, as I like to call them. So there are things in our lifestyle like skincare products whatever you put on your skin ends up inside your body, and your liver and your kidneys have to filter it within 20 to 30 minutes. So you're really looking for clean, organic skincare. Certainly helps to assist where there's a major hormonal imbalance, as well as plastics, heating in plastics, pesticides, herbicides, plastic water bottles, makeup, you name it. Women these days are so exposed to so many environmental pollutants, which literally bind to our hormone receptors and exert an effect more toxic than their own estrogen. So really trying to clean up your lifestyle has a huge impact on just reducing that level of estrogen exposure. And look, I guess when it comes to diet, there's a few schools of thought around this, but clinically I've found, and I'm sure you probably agree with this, Tasha, is that a very low inflammatory diet is ideal.
I do actually.
So,
I do actually various things, but
yeah.
I agree with your summary there, definitely.
Yeah, so, promoting a high plant base is the simplest way to think about it. Diets don't need to be that complicated. It's literally just go as close to the source as possible, a whole food. And the more plant-based, the better. So hence why the vegan and vegetarian diet is very, very beneficial for a woman with endo. And then, of course, that can be a little bit difficult too, because you do sometimes, if you're a bit more of a carnivorous type person, you do like to have a little bit of meat. So that's where you might go, okay, we'll have some fish or a bit of chicken, and just trying to eat as organically as possible, and perhaps just having a bit of red meat, once a week or twice a week if absolutely necessary, but ideally just focusing on a very high plant-based diet. And in addition to that, accompanying it with a low gluten, and in fact 100% gluten-free I promote, as well as soy-free, dairy-free, and low in sugar. Gluten is an inflammatory chemical that's in a lot of grains. And unfortunately, it really tends to exacerbate the symptoms of endometriosis, from bloating to inflammation, affecting cycles and mood. So, and in this day and age, we have so many options with gluten-free that we really don't need to be consuming it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And as I say to a lot of my patients, if you really need some gluten, save it for the good stuff. Like in Melbourne, we have some amazing wood-fired pizzas, like save it for that special occasion versus having it with your eggs every morning, or having it, with your lunch and chicken in a sandwich and salad. Try to avoid glutinous foods and go for more grain-free ideally, but also just gluten-free. But remember, with gluten-free, it still can be high glycemic index load on your body, so high sugar, that means, which is not ideal either in a woman with endo, because we do want to encourage healthy weight maintenance. So just be mindful of the carbohydrate intake. Still have some, but opt for low GI gluten-free. But again, going back to the whole food, vegetable, fruits, nuts and seeds, and plant proteins where possible.
It's amazing what you can find in that respect. There are I know a lot of people, when they see those restrictions, go, oh, I could not follow that diet. But I do find that there are so many recipes with veggies, with nuts, that you really just got to be use your imagination. Grab some recipe books. We've got some great ones on the Conceive Baby website as well, and try it for a couple of weeks. Is what I don't know about you with your patients, but I always say you don't need to stick with this forever. Just try it for a couple of weeks, and the difference people feel in how well they feel and symptom-free encourages people to stay on it, I think.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the beauty of creating restrictions like this, is that people feel so much better that they're happy to maintain it, that they actually go, wow, I do feel mentally, physically so much better. So yeah, it tends, compliance with diet changes like this isn't as big as a deal as perhaps it appears, as overwhelming as it can appear when you initially sort of hear this sort of information. And then of course, it's never about being perfect. That's the other thing I like to say, is just that just do your best, do what you can, and if you fall off the wagon, you fall off, you just get back on and keep going. Yeah. And exercise is another really important aspect of naturopathic medicine that we like to promote, because exercise burns fat, which fat is stored in the estrogen, is stored in the fat cells. Excessive estrogen is. Exercise promotes circulation to the uterine and endometrial area. It's great for mental health. It balances out the calorie load that we're having. It keeps us flexible. There's so many benefits. And you know, I'm a big believer in exercise, and I kind of put it in the same category as sleep and food and water. It's not really negotiable. We have arms and legs for a reason. You know, we're meant to move them, not just sit on our bottoms and eat and talk and enjoy. Of course, we're meant to do that, but there's, you know, movement is absolutely crucial and very crucial in the treatment and management of endo. So there's a lot of amazing nutritional medicines we have at our fingertips as naturopaths. I'm not going to go into exact details of each one and why. There's some information there for you. The thing I would mention though is with this information is that this really needs to be prescribed in line with a qualified naturopath, because not every person needs this. Some people do, some don't, some need more, some need less. There are sometimes other priorities, and also the quality of supplementation is absolutely paramount in achieving a clinical and therapeutic effect. And unfortunately, a lot of the over-the-counter supplements that you can get do not have the type and quality of nutritional medicine that I myself as a naturopath will prescribe. And then you can get combination formulas, and you need to look at the dose according to the diet and lifestyle. So it's a bit of information as to why we prescribe these things, but again, it is case by case, a case by case prescription. And there's a few more different nutritional medicines there that you can have a look at in your time. So an area I'm passionate about that I think sometimes gets perhaps underestimated around the clinical effect that it can give is herbal medicine. Herbal medicine has an incredible affinity for the female reproductive system. We have so many beautiful herbs that reduce inflammation, reduce heavy blood flow, improve painful periods and clots, and improve the luteal phase, which literally means improve fertility, miscarriage prevention, tonify the uterus, the ovaries, reduce spasms, you name it. We just have so many beautiful herbs at our fingertips. And again, these need to be prescribed in accordance with the individual woman. I'm quite also passionate about some of the liver herbs that we have, because this is a big area in endometriosis, is working on liver detoxification and detoxifying excessive toxic estrogen out of the body. And there's a list of some of those herbs that some of you may have heard of: milk thistle, turmeric, schisandra, green tea, etc. So some treatment strategies, as I mentioned, that's very, very important is estrogen metabolism. And that is involved in firstly reducing the estrogenic load on the body, which comes back to that lifestyle stuff I was mentioning previously. In addition, we can also work on upregulating the excessive estrogen that can be occurring in a woman with endo. We do this through a elimination channel called cytochrome P450, that is the detoxification enzymatic area of the liver. And this is where it's quite a complex process that happens, but let me sort of explain it a little bit in a more simpler way than what's mentioned there. Essentially, phase one is where a toxin comes in and it comes to the liver, and the liver gets that toxin and breaks it up into a more toxic metabolite. And that's the key there, that is, it becomes actually more toxic. And I kind of compare it to, say, a branch being put through a mulcher. Okay, so it's been broken down into a nice form for the body to eliminate it. And that's where phase two comes in. Phase two is involved in grabbing that mulch or that more toxic metabolites and removing it through urine and feces and gallbladder and kidneys and lymphatic system, etc. So our elimination channels. So with natural medicine, we try to upregulate that detoxification system. And one of the best ways to do this is through an estrogen metabolizing diet. So first off, eating organic. is ideal. Organic food it doesn't contain the herbicides and pesticides that actually bind to our hormone estrogen receptors and exert a toxic effect. So therefore the liver doesn't have to clean up that mess if you're trying to focus on a more organic diet. However, as we all know, organic food sometimes can be a little bit expensive. So I popped a little list on there to help you ladies with just some cheaper ways of perhaps getting some organic food and yet still being able to sort of, afford it with your weekly budget. But a really easy way to think about it, this is the Dirty Dozen Clean 15, is that the more soft and porous a vegetable is, like spinach and cucumbers and strawberries and things like that, the more it can take on those herbicides and pesticides. And that actually ends up in the food. And unfortunately, no amount of washing with bicarb or apple cider vinegar will really take out that toxic exposure that plant has been exposed to. So that's where the Clean 15 aspect is, where they've got more of a husk and a shell around them, like eggplant or cauliflower or onions and avocados and corn. So they tend to be a little bit more protected from the sprays. Asparagus is a little bit exempt from that rule, but the reason is that it grows very quickly out of the soil. So hopefully that's a little guide that just helps you, the Dirty Dozen Clean 15, just to at least try and cross the line and moving into as much organic produce as you can. And taking into account meat is also very important for that if you are wanting to have some chicken and some lamb, etc. in your diet. Here's some other foods that are actually specifically about upregulating estrogen detoxification. So what that means is they actually work on that phase 2, which is the cleaner. That's what picks up that toxic metabolites that has been broken down by phase 1 and removes them through the body. And some of the sulfur vegetables are quite well known to do that. Vegetables such as cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, onion, kale, Brussels sprouts, they're all really beautiful at upregulating estrogen detoxification. Here's some little snack tips that I would suggest here would be like some celery with some hummus. There's an estrogen metabolizing snack. Having a couple of organic green tea, having a couple of cups of those a day is a beautiful way to just work with your diet and, again, detoxifying estrogen. Making some alfalfa sprouts, putting them through your salads, having some mushrooms with your eggs. And don't forget all the herbs, things like adding rosemary to your meals, to your vegetables, and fresh bunches of parsley and coriander, and adding them at the end of a meal just gives it a really nice pop of colour, but also you're getting a hit of iron, calcium, and you're supporting estrogen metabolism. So additional factors, as I mentioned, is exercise. And the ideal amount of exercise is move your body as much as you can, whatever type of exercise you are happy to do. It doesn't have to be going to the gym and smashing it out with weights. It can be a walk, it can be yoga, it can be swimming, it can be Pilates, it doesn't matter. But at least 5 times a week is considered a very healthy amount for endo. Looking at stress reduction with meditation. And again, as I mentioned, organic skincare. And then don't forget things like deep fried foods and chips. The trans fats are also not ideal for endometriosis and therefore have a negative effect on estrogen detoxification. Other lifestyle factors that are really beneficial in assisting a woman get pregnant with endo is increasing walnuts and eggs and chia and flax seeds. These are omega-3 foods. It's not always about taking a fish oil supplement in this situation. You can actually really try and make it an effort in eating these omega-3 foods. Chia pudding is a great example of that. Snacking on walnuts, making beautiful walnut pestos with your parsley. We have lots of beautiful recipes on the clinic website, melbournenaturalmedicine.com.au, which you're welcome to go to, and there's some really beautiful recipes for you with chia puddings and different fish dishes, etc. So feel free to utilize that source there. Again, as I mentioned, avoid heating in plastic, microwaving all of your food in plastic, and Pyrex containers are a great alternative to this. I personally don't even own a microwave, and I heat in a pan or heat in the oven in a Pyrex container, or use a convection oven, a small convection oven at work. So I encourage women to do a similar thing where possible. I know it's difficult in some workplaces, but where you can, try not to microwave your food or reheat your food in a microwave and plastic, and try and use your stovetop or oven where possible. And aim for some clean water, at least 2 litres a day, and ideally filtered. So just a very important point, as I did mention before, is that herbal medicines are not really appropriate to be self-prescribing, because they need to be individually prescribed by a herbalist or trained naturopathic practitioner, not only for getting it right and therefore having therapeutic effect, but also some of these herbs are actually not safe during pregnancy and also lactation. So if you're trying to fall pregnant and you're taking these herbs or nutrients, you really could be putting your body in harm's way, whereas a naturopathic practitioner knows how to appropriately prescribe in accordance with what your aims are. A lot of women come to our clinic and they're actually trying to fall pregnant while they've got their endometriosis, and we have to do a specialised prescription for this and time it according to their cycle and things like that. So it's very important to really take that into account when you're looking at using herbal and nutritional medicine to support your hormonal problem. So just some additional tips that perhaps sometimes get missed and are quite old school. One of my favourites is the castor oil packs. This is a really beautiful old remedy that you can do. It's literally just applying a damp cloth filled with, if you can get it, organic castor oil, and basically placing that on the abdomen. And then with a heat pack, doing that once or twice a week can really help to break up adhesions. Ginger compresses are also a really beautiful thing to do. And reducing tampon use. And if you do need tampons, which, let's face it, often it is appropriate to wear tampons with swimming or that nice dress, or at work, it's understandable that they can be far more comfortable. However, just trying to go for an organic tampon, because the standard tampons have been bleached, and that's a dioxin exposure, which is again another endocrine disruptor. So going for organic tampons where possible is ideal. And then just another tip is that, which I realise a lot of women aren't aware of when I tell them this, is that iron deficiency actually can cause you to bleed heavier. I know it sounds wrong, doesn't it? You think, surely if I'm so low in iron, I would bleed less. But no, unfortunately, it can actually promote heavy bleeding. So get your iron tested and go on a naturopathic practitioner brand only that is prescribed through a naturopath of a very good quality iron to boost your levels up, and especially prior to pregnancy. Because once you're pregnant, the stores can really drop out very easily in the 2nd and 3rd trimester. So I always really focus on trying to build those stores prior to pregnancy, and that also can help to reduce that heavy bleeding. Another tip is just to reduce inflammation prior to your period. And obviously you can do that through diet and lifestyle, as those tips that I've mentioned earlier, but also taking some natural herbal anti-inflammatories prior, which again can be prescribed through a naturopath. And I might do them 3 or 4 days prior to the actual period, and it can make a huge significance in the reduction of the amount of anti-inflammatories a woman will need, and in fact, if she even needs them, especially in line with all of the lifestyle protocols and the herbal and nutritional protocols that are implemented through an endometrial getting a woman pregnant protocol. So yeah, and I think that's just about it pretty much. So you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and we have the website there, melbournenaturalmedicine.com.au.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Angela. There was some really fabulous information there. I know there's a few people with their notepads beside them, and if you haven't got your notes down in time, we will be putting up a summary of Angela's talk on the website in the next couple of days. So I'll be sending out a link to that. So if you haven't got a chance to write down all those clean green foods and things like that, we will be putting out a summary so you can have a look at that on the website in the coming days.
Lovely.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your time tonight. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already signed up to the Conceive Baby newsletter, jump on conceivebaby.com.au and sign up so you are first in line for all those great new articles and our webinar series, which will be continuing, particularly next week. So I'll be sending out a link in the coming days for that one as well. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you soon.